we are lucky to have them in Toastmasters. Not only that, lucky to have them as our District 57 Toastmasters in service to us this year. So that's all being said, yeah, we're lucky to have them in Toastmasters and to have them in service, but I think we're even a little bit more lucky because of his poetical skills. Now, he attended an event, a tale swap event in December, where he shared a poem, Santa's Night Off. That poem was amazing and delivered, and he had created it nearly 4 days before. And why did he create it? Because amongst working all the time, driving the other amount of time, and being the District 57 Toastmaster, Dennis needs to laugh and relax. He does that by writing poetry. And when he's not writing poetry, he's also the dean of the allpoetry.com school. All that being said, I had no choice when I thought of poetry, romance, and Valentine's Day combined to say, let us bring in Dennis Dawson. So I grabbed his ear, tweaked it really hard, and dragged him here all the way from Cupertino. He will talk to us tonight about what it takes to make poetry effective, especially romantic poetry, focusing on the sonnets, not just of Shakespeare, but of others, and including himself. Once again, we are lucky to have him as a Toastmaster leader, and tonight, Heart to Heart Toastmasters is lucky to have Dennis Dawson.
Sometimes I miss you in the evenings when I know you're asleep. I speak your name softly, repeatedly. I feel a dull ache in a deep cavity in the center of my chest. But I cling to that pain because surrounding that core is a larger, deeper realization that at my best, my strongest, my smartest, my funniest, my most virile, I was never good enough. Never good enough. So I cling to my pain, to keeping on the planet, so I don't lose myself. With the courage of a man with nothing to lose, who can never win, I amuse you with wit, with poetry, with subtlety, with flattery, with undying affection. A love that fills the void, calms the nerves, keeps the pain in abeyance, so I can survive one more night. I know. Him? Yeah, I do this stuff. Poetry is like art. Everybody knows the rules of art, right?
What rules?
There are no rules to art. Those of you who watch SpongeBob SquarePants know that when Squidward tried to teach SpongeBob the rules of art, he ruined SpongeBob forever as an artist. The truth is, you can take a candy bar, chew it up, spit it onto a piece of paper, slap it on the wall, and say, art! And you're right. Because there are no rules. And if you like it, if it makes you happy, it's art. Poetry is exactly the same way. You can sit down with your big fat crayon, slap it on the wall. That's poetry. It rhymes. And no one can tell you different. So what I'd like to do is talk about poetry sort of from the ground up. We're going to talk about what makes certain poetry work. What makes poetry last longer than our own lifetimes. I'm not saying that this is great poetry. I'm not saying that it's something that is beyond your grasp. Because the fact is, everyone here is a poet. It is born in our bones. It is in our blood. And every time you try to say something nice to somebody, that's poetry. So I started with free verse. You heard free verse. Woohoo! let it all hang out there. It's free, it's easy. It's half price just this week. A lot of people get confused with free verse because they think free verse has no rules. That's true. Poetry has no rules. But effective free verse does some very particular things. And one of the reasons I chose these particular poems is that if you look at them in terms of the line length, you can see in Etude number 3, I purposely let the lines get a little bit longer as the dreamer, in this particular case, is getting a little more lucid, and then he goes back to sleep. With the original Sin and Confessions, I'm assuming you read these when I passed them out, because I started talking and you started reading my poetry, because I know. Envy is the original sin. And I am sinful. Born in sin, born in sin. My inspiration draws me in. Exaltation, exhalation, expiration. Careless words, overheard, heard over and over. Words to another lover. In pain again, but not my own. Not mine alone. Alone. Now what we're doing here is breaking down each individual thought onto its own line. I took what was in my heart, what I was feeling. You may notice that my poetry tends to be about unrequited love, because I'm very familiar with that. And so while I'm sitting there being unrequited, these are the things that are actually coming out. This is actually in my heart. So when I say envy, I want you to think about that word for just a moment before you continue. Is the, well, I don't want you to think that is the, so it's all, there's a little line. Original sin, boom. What the hell does he mean by that? By breaking it this way, I'm asking you to focus on each one of these thoughts individually. And you'll find that as you read poems like this, you'll read through it, then you'll back up. Say, what was that sentence now? Okay, I got the words, and that was neat. And it filled my mind with all kinds of great imagery. What the heck was he trying to say? So I have two goals. One is to get you to read top to bottom before you decide whether or not to read. If I can do that, I've been effective. Then I want you to go back and say, what the heck did he mean by all of that? And really dig in. And you'll find that certain lines will grab you, and certain lines will explain to you why my love is unrequited. When we're working in free verse then, this is where people sort of get misled. They think free verse is easy. You can just put words on the page. You can just put them there in any order, and it's going to be a poem. Well, you're right, it will be a poem, but is it a poem that people will latch on to? Is it one that they will enjoy? Is it one they'll read over and over? Is it one they're going to recite to their lover? Maybe, maybe not. I think about it the way I think of jazz. You have jazz musicians. Some people will pick up a guitar, and it's just a fish note. They become really good at it because they love it. And they do it for hours and hours, and they hear these things, and it works for them. Then you've got Wynton Marsalis. His father was a jazz musician and a conductor who forced his son to go through all of the scales and learn to play that trumpet to the extent that he is the premier classical trumpet player in the United States. And oh, by the way, he also happens to be the premier jazz trumpet player because that's his passion. But he took everything he learned about technique, the skills that he needed to read music, to orchestrate music, to play music really well with a great deal of precision, and then he used that to inform his jazz. The same is true with poetry. You don't have to ever go to a poetry class. You don't have to read poetry. You can just write words. And some people are just great at it right out of the box. Other people need to learn the basics. And the truth is, anybody can learn the basics of writing poetry. And that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to teach you how to write a sonnet. Sonnet. A lot of people think, oh, the sonnet, oh, that's the premier poetry style of the English language. Shakespeare wrote sonnets, so they must be the best kind of poetry there is. Now, Shakespeare was writing the kind of poetry he knew, the poetry that everybody liked, and he wrote it in the style that was popular in his day. And so we can look at Shakespeare's sonnet number 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's thing? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dim, and every fair from fair sometimes declines by chance, or nature's courses untrue. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of the fair thou woost, nor shall death brag thou wantest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe and eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. He wrote that 500 years ago about someone he loved. We're not sure who he loved. That's a great subject of debate. But we know that he loved somebody because 500 years later, we can still read those words. They still have the same power. So let's break down our poem here. The first thing I want to talk about is euphony versus cacophony. Euphony versus cacophony. Euphony, euphoria, okay. Nice sounding. Euphone, nice. Cacophony, sounds like cotton. So when you're writing a poem, you can put words down on the page, but you have to watch out for cacophonic words. Words that are very pleasant words, but they have a harsh sound. They tend to be words that have K's and P sounds in them. And think about it. Lips, kiss, these words that we use, whisper, have got these harsh sounds in them. So a lot of times you sit down to write a love poem, and you read it, and it just doesn't sound right. So, for example, here's an example of cacophony. Cute kitty cats in sparkling spectacles. It's a sweet little image, isn't it? But it's got a very harsh sound to it. Compare that with some euphony. Slender eels slither slowly over dead, lidless eyes. Not a very pleasant image, but the sound of the words is a pleasant sound, and it makes it that much more creepy. So you can use this to create irony. You can use it to create tension in what you write. Just for a little bit of fun, I've got two examples of cacophony and euphony on the back page. Let's see. I would like you, sir, would you do me a big favor and read the euphony on the back page?
And I don't have my glasses.
Oh.
But I'll do my best.
No, make all the excuses you like. You're still going to read. An example of euphony.
Lemonade and lavender, lovely little sugar loaves. Savor all the flavors. Serve yourself some heaven. Linger with a lady finger. Won't you have some more?
The velvet tones. Words come so smoothly off. Now, Lindy, would you read the cacophony?
Chomp on cookies, gnaw on cupcakes, crunch, munch, wallow, swallow, mix them up with milkshakes, wash them down with root beer, grapple, gobble, gargle, gorge, gimme, 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 gimme more! Very good.
Now, unfortunately, I picked two velvet-voiced people. I was hoping that you would be more harsh in your speech, but I should have known better. Yes. But listen to the contrast there, where we're saying, and Lindy with her lovely voice, and yet you put those harsh sounds in there, and suddenly your love poem isn't so strong. So the reason I point out euphony and cacophony isn't so that you sit down and you write a poem, and you say, boy, I sure want to be euphonous. Look at my euphony. And work on it that way. But what you can do is go back and edit your poems later, after it finishes, and you're reading it aloud, you're thinking, I'm going to say this to my sweetie later on. And it sounds like lips and kissing and caresses, and it just has that harsh sound. And you can talk about her malleable mouth instead, and use more euphonous terms to smooth over the rough phrases. This is great in poetry, but it also works in your speeches, correct?
Our word of the night is delectable. I'm guessing that's a cacophonous sound?
It's a cacophonous sound. It has one advantage, though. It's got an L on both ends, so that softens it. And you can soften these words very often. Right. There are a lot of letters that are neutral, like G, B. So B, but, it sounds like P, right? But beloved, it can be very soft. But you put it with a lot of P's, it starts to take on the texture of the P, and it sounds more cacophonous. So you can watch for those sounds as well, the neutral ones that sort of take on the flavor of the ones around it. By going back and editing these sounds out, you can improve, as I said, not just your poetry, but your speeches as well. Next thing I want to talk about is meter. Meter, that's tum, ta-tum, ta-tum. Yes.
Question. You said for cacophony, it's like K's and P's and CH's.
CH,
But
short A sounds.
what's the letters for euphony? Is it L's and M's or?
L, M, S, that sort of thing. Anything that gives you that nice, smooth, glissant. Moving on to meter. How many of you have heard the term iambic pentameter in the past? You all know what that means?
Five of the same.
Okay. Iambic pentameter, you can think of it as medical speech, tendinitis. You go right to the doctor says, you've got tendinitis. I've got tendinitis, oh my goodness, yes, tendinitis. That will be $500. What the doctor has just told you is that your tendon hurts. Well, you knew that when you walked in. But he said it in Greek. So that's why it cost you $500 when you walk out. Iambic pentameter is Greek. And iamb is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Iambic words, I have some listed here, don't I? Yes. Endure, acclaim, repeat. You use iambs all the time when you're talking with your intimate other. I know. Unstressed followed by a stressed syllable. If you put 5 of them together, that is a meter composed of 5 iambs. Pentameter, like a pentagon. A building with 5 sides, holy cow. Yes. So iambic pentameter is just ta-tum, 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 ta-tum. Now why does that matter? I've got an example of iambic tetrameter just below. Fred is dead, the doctor said. The mourners crowded round the bed, and hands were wrung, and tears were shed, but Fred said, I don't think I'm dead. You're dead, all right, said Doc Malone. My tests and probes have clearly shown you have no pulse. Your life is flown. You're just a sack of blood and bone. At this, of course, the wife jumped in, and all Fred's friends and next of kin, which started such an awful din that Fred got up and poured a gin and tonic, turned on the set. He watched TV alone and let the others have their tete-a-tete on whether he had died as yet. It goes on. Ta-tum, 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 ta-tum. It's got a nice, bouncy rhythm. You hear this all the time in Hallmark cards. I haven't seen you, Mother, for many, many years, and yet every time I think of you, I think of all your tears. That's when people say, oh my God, that's like a Hallmark card. It's a Hallmark. It doesn't reach down into their soul. It doesn't touch them at the very center of their being. I was actually giving you an example of Valentine. You can see that here. It all began the day the man came riding into town. His motley clothes and 10-inch nose betrayed he was a clown. That one's dirty. And long. Now, when you work in dimeter, 2 iambs, trimeter, 3 iambs, tetrameter, 4 iambs in a row, it's always going to be bouncing, always going to move along. But let's take a look at Elizabeth Barrett Browning's sonnet. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Now I could say, how do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight, for thee ends of being and ideal grace. I can put the rhythm onto it, but iambic pentameter has this little pause at the end of every line. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight, for the ends of being and ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need, by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. Every line is its own individual thought. Remember way back when I started talking? No, oh my God. Yeah, yes. Way back when I started talking, I was presenting some of my free verse, and I tried to isolate individual thoughts. Iambic pentameter does exactly the same thing. It isolates each thought on each line of the poem. But you'll notice that every line is exactly long enough to express a complete thought, a complete sentence in English. That's why this is the premier poetic style for true romantic poetry. Because it's contemplative, because it gives you that time to say what you mean, and it gives the reader a chance to interpret it at the end of every line. So when you're writing sincere poetry, you can't beat iambic pentameter. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions? Good. Now the next thing that a sonnet has got is a rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme is the order in which the rhyming words appear. Shakespeare's sonnet, which I read for you, is an English sonnet. The rhymes are A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. And what that means is line A rhymes with the line A, line B rhymes with line B, C rhymes with C, D rhymes with D, all the way down. Follow that? So that's how we mark those, with small letters. Elizabeth Browning's sonnet is an Italian sonnet. Its rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, B, B, A, C, D, C, D, C, D. Fewer rhyming words. Because of those Italians, darn them, stupid Italians, they have so many rhyming words. They all end with O or E, right? Spanish, so many rhyming words. French, so many more rhyming words than we have in English. So in English, we give ourselves 7 rhymes in our 14-line sonnet, while the Italians will give themselves, they just need 4. Just need 4 rhyming words. Hey, Julio, you want to rhyme? Sure, Antonio, yes. I'll rhyme with your name. Well, Julio, I'll rhyme with yours. Yes, it's no problem at all. With free verse, you have the chance to choose whatever rhythm you want to use. You can choose whatever word you want to stick in there. In a closed form, like a sonnet, you have to follow that meter, and you have to follow the rhyme. And it seems like it's more difficult to write a sonnet, doesn't it? to lock yourself into that. Actually, it's easier to write a sonnet well than it is to write free verse well. With a sonnet, you know what the rhythm's going to be. Ta-tum, 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 ta-tum. Ta-tum, 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 ta-tum. When you write free verse, you have to find a rhythm out there in the cosmos and make it fit your poem. You can't just stick some words together and have one line that's 17 syllables long, and then the next one's 3, and then the next one's 14, and have the reader be able to read the poem in such a smooth way that it goes from the page to the brain to the heart. With a sonnet, you know how to follow the rhythm, you know which words are supposed to sound alike, and that enables you to create the poem without worrying about those aspects of it. You see, a free verse doesn't have to rhyme, but it has to sound good. It doesn't have rhyme, it has what's called assonance, asonance, where it sounds in a unified way, everything all mixed together nicely. Most free verse poets stink. The reason is they just put words on the page. They don't worry about how the words sound, and they don't worry about the rhythm that's created and how that's communicating from the page. As a result, they just put words down there. Sometimes it works fantastically. Sometimes it's awful. It's like going into the kitchen and mixing some ingredients. And one time it is a fantastic cake, and the next time, oh my God. It is something completely inedible. A lot of people think free verse, yeah, I'm free. I'm going to rebel, baby. I'm not going to be tied down by your rules for poetry. I'm going to express myself. I'm going to express what's inside. I'm rebellious. I'm a rebel with a cause. Well, what are you rebelling against if you don't know classical poetry? It's just chaos, unless you have learned the basics, and then you can apply them. One other thing that I want to mention about sonnet that sets it apart from other poetry is what's called a volta. That's a turn, a change, a switch. The volta is going to occur either on the 9th line or the 13th line of this 14-line poem. In Shakespeare's sonnet, you'll notice that the third stanza begins with but. That's the beginning of the volta. He's saying, am I going to compare you to summer? Nah. Summer. It's hot, and sometimes it's cloudy, and the winds blow, and the buds come off the trees. Summer's awful. But you, Judy, you are the living in. You're gonna be around forever. You're that cute. That this poem, when other people read it 500 years from now, is on the 17th floor of the St. Paul's Tower, they're going to say, hey, she must have been some looker. And that's the volta that comes there. The volta can also be 2 lines that are going to sum up the poem. Let me read The Long Haul. Be sure I get time cues. How are we doing for time? 10 more minutes, great. Oh boy, you get to hear all my poetry. Just kidding, everyone. At the time, it felt like we were winning. Cut the cake and smash it in our faces. Climb into the limo and we're finished. Then we learned that it was a beginning. Marriages are kind of like foot races. Not a dash, a marathon together. Over time, libido is diminished, waistlines thicken while our hair is thinning. Loafers choose the sneakers without laces. Late in life, new patterns are established. Trying times show whether you can weather storms and dry spells while remaining supple. Stresses stretch, but never tear the tether, tying us together as a couple. So in that one, the volta is the last 2 lines. And what it's trying to do is sum up the entire sentiment of the poem with just that little couplet, with just a little effort. All right. Shakespeare wrote 500 years ago. A lot of people say, I'm going to sit down and write a sonnet. And they start writing a sonnet. I love thee like thou art thine. And they say, well, I'm trying to write like Shakespeare. Well, Shakespeare was writing 500 years ago. He was writing the way everybody talked. Hey, how thou art. When they're walking around. So there's no reason today, if we honor Shakespeare, that we would write the way they did 500 years ago. Shakespeare did not write like Chaucer. One that April with her shoulder sword, he there to engender was passed to the road, and all of that. No, he spoke in modern English. Actually, Shakespeare is called modern English. Oh, that's correct. And we should also speak in the common vernacular. So when you write your poems, don't feel like you have to go to an old-fashioned style or a stilted style. You can choose to do that if you like. And if, like Brendan, you're writing a love poem to Dumbledore, you might. I was thinking Gandalf.
Thank you so much.
You might adopt that style because you're trying to harken back to an older style. But when you're writing that love poem, when you go home, because I know you're all going through this, and you want to impress that special someone, write something genuine from the heart. Write it in modern language, modern English, and tell them what you really feel. That's what you're going for. My love poem up here on the upper right is a good example of vernacular. I think I love the love I love. I have no choice. It's not her fault. She didn't lead me on. If only she would lead, I would rejoice. I think that she would rather I would go on. I patiently await her every word, and no passing sets my heart aflame. I know that all of this must sound absurd. I'm flattered by the fact she knows my name. But in this I am also not to blame. I cannot be held liable for my heart. My brain is capable of knowing shame. My other organs simply aren't. The truth is, I'm not drawn to her. I'm shoved because she is a creature to be loved. That's the That's the trick of interpreting poetry. When you get up to read poetry, you really want to avoid anything that smacks of sing-song as you're reading. Read it as if you're reading prose. But remember also that it's poetry, and there's music in it. And so you want to put some music in your voice. You want to break away from those three tones that we all speak in. Where are you going? I'm going to the store. Oh, that's nice. Would you get me something? I don't know, but da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Well, when you're reading poetry, do you think I'm a poetry machine? A churning, clanking, versifying brain that sputters off each time you pull my chain? A zill to jingle in your tambourine? A jester puppet player for the queen? A cork that pops to pour your pink champagne? A mirror forming lines for your cocaine? A full syringe of Villanelle vaccine? You tell me that I have to write for you, and here I am composing once again. You tell me make a song, and so I sing, because there's nothing else that I can do. The truth is, I'm like other men. I cannot refuse you anything. So I've mixed cacophony in the first 8 lines with euphony. But I've made my little bolt, I've made my little change. And I start off, huh? What are you asking for? Huh? Oh, all right, because I love you. More dynamics, more changes in value, very good. And most importantly, always remember to invest yourself in the character. Even if it's a poem that you have written yourself, be that guy, be that lady who wrote the poem. Don't be the one who just had to drive up to the corner of Lex and Van Buren up here, park, and then walk 8 blocks and come in here. When I'm reading my poem, I want to be that guy who's sitting with the quill, who's trying to woo his lady across the years, across the ocean. And that's the person that your intimate other most wants to hear from. Do we have any other questions about this? Yeah.
The modern day rappers, are any of them following this tradition, some of these formats? Do you know? Or?
Let me tell you about modern day rappers. Some of them are just great. most of them are like anything else. But you can say the same thing of most garage bands. You can say the same thing of just about anybody. Have they studied literature? Some of them have. Some of them haven't. And some of them are just natural poets.
Any in particular that you recognize are following some of these more traditional formats?
I will say that the ones who are really successful, and that you'll notice a lot of, I don't know a lot about rap music, but I'm thinking of like LL Cool J. They go on, they write screenplays. They go on to produce television programs. These are smart guys out there. They are talented actors. Some of them, I can think of Dr. Kildare. What's his name? Anyway, you know the guy who played Richard Chamberlain. He played Dr. Kildare. He got this role because he was really handsome. And they put him on TV, and he got to act. No, I'm Richard Chamberlain, I'm the actor. When he finished making that TV show, he went to England to acting school for almost 10 years. He was on the stage. You didn't see him in anything. Then he came back as an actor. So a lot of times people, they have a natural talent. It gets them someplace. And it gets them to a position where they can actually start working on it. And it's sort of the cart before the horse, but they end up in the same place. Yeah.
In the love poem, what does the parentheses represent?
I'm sorry?
In the love poem, what does the parentheses represent?
The parenthesis is just a parenthesis. It's an aside. It's as if I were saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. Oh, God, I hope she's not listening. Sort of the internal dialogue, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
How would you classify this word? It's cacophony or euphony? The word is osculation, and I think you know what it means. You know what it means.
You got a sk in there.
Osculate.
Yeah. If it were the only word on the line that had a K or a P or a popping sound, a percussive sound, it would slide by because you got the L and the sh. It's an osculation. There's a little pop there. Yeah.
Tell them what it means.
I don't know.
Brendan, tell them what it means. Keith, tell them what it means.
Kiss.
Exactly. It means to kiss.
Oh. Yeah. Osculate me, my love. It reminds me of my Cajun upbringing.
I can put it in a poem.
Deep Louisiana, my teacher said that I had to write a paper. And we picked words out of a box, and the word I got was frugal. So I went and asked my mother, what does frugal mean? She said, oh, frugal, that don't mean nothing but thrifty. I said, thrifty? I didn't know what thrifty means. So I go ask my dad, Papa, what's thrifty? And he says, oh, that means to save. Oh, I know what save means, so I went and wrote the story. Once upon a time, a prince was riding his horse through the forest, and he heard a faraway voice, frugal me. And he rode up to the edge of a big hole, and he looked down there, and there was a beautiful princess. And she said, frugal! The prince jumped down that hole, frugaled her, and they lived happily.